I'm going to go quickly through the startups so we can get to the four-year plan. Just, is there anybody here who absolutely wants to work for a startup? That's your goal in life? Anybody here who absolutely never wants to work for a startup? Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I've done a couple of them, and it's a really, really interesting experience, but it's not for the faint of heart.
It made me nervous.
Yeah. Yeah, it should make you nervous. It's very nerve-wracking. Although, it's easier to go to a startup when you're 23 than it is when you're 53, okay? There's never enough money. There can't be enough money, all right? Even if you can find the money to fund this thing, you don't want to take more than you absolutely essentially need because it basically dilutes the people who are starting up, who are beginning the company. And as I say, all the details of this are all on the website. I just want to hit the highlights here. Because there's never enough money, there's also never enough people. You've got to run a very, very lean organization. And that means that doing one job may not be enough. When I went to my most successful startup, I was hired on as the Chief Knowledge Officer, which is a great title if you can get it, by the way. I was responsible for making sure that knowledge got moved around the organization. But on my first day, they said, you know what, Doug, we don't have an HR, we don't have a head of HR, and we don't have a CIO. So will you do those two jobs also? So I knew nothing about HR. I knew a little bit about information technology, but for the couple of months before they actually brought on someone to do HR and to do the CIO's job, I was doing that in addition. There's also never enough time. There's a huge amount of competition. Startups, you need to get out there. You need to get the products to market as fast as possible because if it's a really good idea, someone else has probably thought about it. There's a huge amount of uncertainty. And really interesting statistic is that most startups do not go to market with the product that's in their business plan, the product or service. It almost never, ever happens. It's because the business plan is a document that kind of gets you out there and gets you to a certain point, but then the market decides. You may think you know what the market wants. You may think you know what the software product should look like, or what this cell phone, the features should have. But the market decides for you, and you've got to be flexible. You can't be pig-headed and say, unless you're Steve Jobs, who knew exactly what everybody wanted. But most people, you have to go out there and you let the market decide. And even Steve had a number of very, very visible disasters with what he thought the market wanted, and they didn't. The perks can be great. If you work for a really well-funded, once you get to the size of Facebook now, and obviously Google is already a public company, but the perks can be fantastic. Out in Silicon Valley, they don't want you to ever have to go home, okay? So you can come in and you get breakfast, lunch, and dinner, usually for free. There's a bank, okay, with an ATM and a teller. You can do your laundry. You can, there's a post office. You can do your mail. It's just, my son had a roommate last summer who was doing an internship at Facebook. And I don't know why she even bothered, he said he didn't know why she even bothered renting this room in their apartment because she never came home. She just spent, 20 hours a day. It was insane. But if that's what you want and you're working with people, and you like the environment and you like the people you're working with, why should you go home? So, one of the other funny stories, this is a couple of years ago, I was walking through a startup company and I noticed one of these espresso machines, that's this big, one of those big Italian things. And I asked the CEO, I said, what did you pay for that? He said, oh, it's $15,000, $20,000. I made it up in the first month in productivity, because all of this caffeine that the people were drinking just kept them awake, and his payback was only a month long. And the last thing is that reality sucks. Okay, most startups don't make it. The typical rule of thumb is that for a venture capitalist, they invest in 10 companies, 5 of them disappear without a trace. Complete loss, 100% loss of the investment. 2 of them break even, which means they might get, some of their money back. 2 others make a little bit of money. And if you're really, really lucky, the 1 in 10 is a blockbuster. Makes you back all the money plus, what you need to stay in business from 1 out of the 10 companies. And today, I'd say it's probably even less than that. So you have to go into these things. I won't spend a lot of time on it because it doesn't sound like you guys are pushing for going to a startup. But I will tell you, I never had so much fun as I did at Scient. We had a great group of people. We were building something amazing, and